Wendell, you ready to do the tech? I think I'm going to just go onto Facebook and tell everybody that we're going to be doing the tech about right now. You know, so they can
no, don't
later.
go to Facebook.
Oh God, my eyes! Everything is rainbows. Oh my God! Hold on a second. Let me go. I've got to wash my eyes out. This dog's covered in rainbows. I know. You see outside. Oh God! And outside, the skies are covered in rainbows. Umbra. The skies are covered in rainbows. I need to go wash my eyes out. Let's go. So yeah, feel a little bit better now. Just let me just not look at Facebook for just a moment. So the rainbow thing has kind of gotten out of control this week. Rainbows are everywhere, and I'm not really going to say anything about the cause because that's not what we're going to talk about here. It's yay, everything's cool. I do kind of feel like we shouldn't need to have to put rainbows because it should be obvious that we're all, intelligent and accepting and whatever. But, there's rainbows everywhere. So apparently, and this is sort of allegedly apparently, the whole rainbow thing was a test from Facebook to see just how much influence they could have over their audience or their sheep, as it were. I mean, let's face it. I mean, most people on Facebook, it's like someone does something and everyone else does it. And so they wanted to be able to figure out how much influence they had over their audience. And yeah, I mean, even if this is not a Facebook test, I'm sure they do this kind of stuff all the time. And I don't even see why it's surprising that this
They've
would
admitted
have
that
been.
they do this kind of stuff fairly regularly because they wanted to see what sort of things it would take to influence somebody. This is actually, I mean, this is probably like my third or fourth favorite thing in the world to talk about. And if you want to see, if you don't know, mind blown, let me just sum up for you. It's like this is the original Adam and Eve story, but the entire advertising industry was built around this. So you guys know Sigmund Freud, and whether or not you think Freud knew anything about what he was talking about, there are certain things he was onto that was basically correct. And things like, we are social creatures. There are social cues. There are certain things that transcend language and culture, things like saying, huh. And that sort of transcends everything. And so as soon as Freud was figuring this stuff out, whether or not he was right, the reasoning was not really good, he contacted his good friend or cousin or whatever, Bernays, Edward Bernays, Bernays, who single-handedly basically created the American advertising industry. You can thank Edward Bernays for having bacon for breakfast. Bernays is the guy that convinced women that it was completely fine to smoke in public and referred to women's cigarettes as victory torches, and just a brilliant sort of public relationist, and was incredibly skilled at manipulating people. And so here you have Freud, who's coming up with these psychological things. Then you have Bernays, who's like, ooh, how can we exploit that to make more money? And so this is happening all over again. It's Facebook. It's like, ooh, Facebook, we're doing a thing. How can I exploit that to make more money? And so if you don't know about Bernays, you should totally go read about it because it's the best thing ever.
I think the most disturbing thing for me is just, how much humans are like sheep. But I feel like a lot of our audience is probably more like goats. You guys just like, okay, everyone else is having a sandwich. Well, I'm going to have a salad. Oh, today everyone's having a salad. I think I'll have a sandwich. And I think it's important to have that, in the world. That's important.
That's why they're really going to enjoy reading the Wikipedia article on Bernays. They're going to be like, holy crap, I had no idea that this was a thing. And it's like, yeah, the whole like a hearty breakfast is good for you was that guy. Because he was like, he wrote into a bunch of doctors and he was like, hey, if you're a doctor, would you say that, having a good hearty breakfast is better than not having any breakfast at all? And the doctors were like, yeah, that's probably true. And he's like, great, bacon and eggs are a part of this complete breakfast. And that became a thing. And so because of that, we have bacon.
Is that where we get Bernays sauce?
No, that's spelled different.
I typed it in and I was like, I don't think this is the right Bernays. So,
creme Bernays. No, that's creme brulee. No, it's about as related.
Wow, Bernays sauce is a child of the Mother Hollandaise sauce. I had no idea. I've never had Bernays. Maybe I have had Bernays sauce.
Bernays is the guy that you're looking for. And so it wasn't really just Freud. I mean, there are other people that influenced him as a public relationist, but I think Freud was like his uncle. Bernays' uncle was Sigmund Freud, And so he would always bounce ideas off of Freud, and they had a relationship. So it wasn't just Freud. There were other people in the mix. But again, it was, how can we exploit human psychology in order to sell products? Because otherwise pork bellies were not selling. And this dude was like, I can sell pork bellies. In fact, I can make women smoke in public, which was not a thing that had ever happened before. While
eating pork bellies.
That's yeah. I mean, this is yeah. So, and here we have Facebook doing the same thing. I mean, this is not good. This is really bad stuff. I mean, not really, but if you are not aware of it, that this is happening to you, it's a form of manipulation.
Yeah, I mean, use Facebook all you like. Just remember who the product is on Facebook. It's you. All right, let's.
And don't forget to buy our T-shirts. While we're at it, I mean,
well, should I just bring it up right now? I've got it somewhere now. There we are. Yes. So buy our T-shirts, but don't buy Apple products. That's going to start a lot of trouble. Guys, before you start flaming us for these T-shirts that say stop buying Apple products, please go and read the description. There's a description for why we did this. And, I mean, the bottom line is that a lot of companies exploit workers in Asia, China, Malaysia, wherever. But Apple is one of the biggest, and they've come under heat, and there's suicides at their factories. They have safety nets to catch people at Foxconn and some of the other factories. And again, a lot of companies use these factories, but Apple is so big and they project such a wholesome image that I think it's somewhat hypocritical that they are not on the forefront of fighting for human rights in their factories and that sort of thing. So that's why we're making the shirt. We want to pressure them to help change things because Apple is so big they can control and change the world if they wanted to. But profits are nice. Having a couple $1 billion in the bank or several $1 billion in the bank, kind of nice. Maybe they should reward some of the people who have helped them become so rich. So anyway, that's my little rant on our Stop Buying Apple Product shirt. But we also have Shirt of the Month. There we go. This is the Beijing skyline. We've got some videos coming up from Beijing, China. So we did a little video to say thanks. And also Gamerstorm, those guys were awesome over there. Deep Cool was awesome. We went and toured their factory, but I want to say thanks to them. They really were just a lot of fun to hang out with over there. They showed us around Beijing, and then we got this cyberpunk art. That's the Chinese television station right there, the big Chinese television station. It's one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen. We decided we would move in down the street from them. They could use a little competition. Anyway, let's get on with the rest of the stuff. So let's talk about the what if engine, shall we? I haven't watched Futurama, so I don't know how the whole what if machine or whatever works. I don't know how it works, but and I can already hear people yelling that I don't watch Futurama. I watch a few things. I just don't have a lot of time, and I'm not opposed to it. You guys can watch it if you want to. I didn't say that I hated it. I just don't watch it. Anyway, Simon Colton. And he's a professor at, Goldsmiths College, University of London. They are working on artificial intelligence, but they're directing their efforts towards fiction. And their idea here is to be able to create sort of a what if machine, some what if scenarios. And the whole idea here is that, you'll tell it what style you want to do. Do you want to make something that's Kafkaesque? Do you want to make something that's Disney style? I'm sure they're going to add more styles as they continue to develop this, and then it will spit out some what ifs, and you'll have sort of a structure for a plot or something like that. Now, there's a few questions I want to pose here. Now, I think that this is going to be a thing. It's going to happen. They're going to create something out of this. I guess my first question is, I'll preface this by saying, so now that we have all these phones, right? We've got all these phones, and 15, 20 years ago, we used to memorize 200 phone numbers. We could walk around, we'd have 200 phone numbers here. We had lots of other information, stuff that we now get on Google. Now, we don't remember anything anymore. The only thing we remember where we have to tap on these screens to get the information. That's all our brain remembers. It only remembers what it thinks is relevant. So, in the future, right now we've got all these writers and they're, coming up with interesting works of fiction and that sort of thing. But when we have artificial intelligence giving us what ifs, are people going to become lazy? Or are they going to sit back and use these sort of tools to help create their stories? And are they going to start to rely on them? And is their brain going to stop the whole abstract process of coming up with plot twists and what ifs and all that sort of thing? Is that going to be a thing? Are some people going to be like, no, man, I don't use those. I'm old school, like Hemingway and the crew and all that. I don't know who those people are. The crew. I don't know who those are.
You know what the first thing this is going to be used for? Twilight fan fiction. Although it's not really fan fiction anymore. It's kind of like AI, but somebody's going to be like, what if some horrible thing in the Twilight universe that I just don't even want to think about? And then the thing's going to produce a story, and they're going to be like, this is amazing. This story is just awesome. And I'm going to quietly weep inside for humanity.
It'll probably be better written than a lot of the stuff in Twilight.
Well, I mean, that wouldn't be hard.
And certainly better than like that 50 Shades stuff. Third grade. How someone with a third grade, writing level can write such nasty stuff. So yeah, I think it's interesting, but answer some of those questions in the comments if you like. Let's move on to the next thing. Okay, we're going to London. David Cameron.
Oh, Lord.
What is wrong with him? Oh, his face looks like it's made of dough. I'm starting to think his brain is made of dough as well. I am. Who the hell voted for this guy? I guess a lot of you guys could say the same things about most of the people that we've elected who are destroying the free world, but I like to point fingers across the ocean and be like, what's wrong with you guys? Because I'm sick of it happening to us, okay? So what's wrong with you guys, man? David Cameron. So he wants to get rid of encryption entirely because encryption it's completely dangerous. He wants there to be no safe spaces from the UK government snooping because the terrorists could be anywhere. And it's all, of course, always a terrorism thing. And if it's not a terrorism thing, it's a pedophilia thing. Or if it's not that, or it's always something awful. And if you oppose it, you're opposing that. You're all of a sudden you're for whatever awful thing. Like, oh, you like encryption? Are you a terrorist? Are you a child molester? That's usually the way they spin these sorts of things. So, yeah, he thinks that the single thing that's really impairing them the most is encryption, and it's everyone's in danger right now because you have encryption on your phone, you have encryption on your email, whatever. Apple has encryption, Google has encryption. That puts the country in a very dangerous state. And let's also not forget this very important argument here. He likes to watch crime dramas. He loves crime dramas, apparently. And if you're not from the UK, you may not know this. I didn't know this off, just offhandedly. But in his crime dramas, and he used this in a speech as a way to back up his whole, we need to remove encryption thing. He said, in all these crime dramas that we watch, almost every time someone is captured, it's because of some data on their computer or an email they sent or a phone. So it's extremely important that we have access to all these things. So he's basing this on a crime drama he's watching on television.
Well, Mr. Cameron, I've seen crime dramas too, where there's some surveillance footage, but it's kind of grainy and kind of weird, and they just keep zooming in and zooming in and zooming in and zooming in, and the original image had to be like 1 billion pixels by 1 billion pixels because they're able to lift the image off of that. So, that's a thing that happens too in reality.
Let me tell you what's going to happen here with all this stuff. So we obviously have several different governments that seem to have sort of a neurosis or a complex where they just have to have all the data. Here, we suck up all the data and put it in Utah. There, they hoover it all up and put it in, I don't even know, somewhere. But over there, they hoover it up. And what's happening now is a problem where old-fashioned police work is no longer the main way to do things. You want all this surveillance data. But, back when, I feel like old-fashioned police work, detective work, like solving things. Sherlock, one of the shows he even references a modern-day version of Sherlock. They just use more technology. But let's look at older school stuff, like old-school Sherlock. He would figure things out by clues that were left, and he was on the trail of a few suspects. Now, we want everyone to be a suspect, and we want all the data. And what's going to happen is we're going to have a pile of data that's so enormous that becomes the problem. And we're not going to be able to figure out who's done what with whom because the data is so big. And we're going to drown in it. And we're not going to solve things. And by the time we figure things out, we're going to be like, hey, there's going to be a building or an attack on this building. Oh, wait, I found it out a week too late. You're going to be behind the times. And then what we're going to do is be like looking at the data being like, oh, yeah, now after that building has exploded, we can look at our data and look, 6 months ago, we had all the information. We just didn't know how to make sense out of it. And then On top of all that, people are going to call and they're going to be like, listen, my neighbor in his backyard, he's building a bomb. And the bomb has a big American flag on it. And the American flag has flames coming off of it. And he's building this right in his backyard. And you'd be like, hold on a minute, we're sifting through all this data. We don't have time to talk about that. And they're going to disregard these tips. Instead of sending a detective like they should, they're going to be like, hold on, we're still sifting through this data. And that's kind of what we've seen. There's hardly been any major benefit to having all this data as far as solving crimes or even preventing them. And a lot of things that they do prevent, they sort of hem and haw, and they're like, well, we stopped something somewhere, I think, maybe. And then usually that's from another outside source other than the data. So the data is just going to become an encumbrance. And I wish that they could realize that, because if they truly wanted us to be safe, they would devise a better means. Maybe something that Benny created, a better way to sort through all this data. I don't know.
Well, once the database is built, you have no idea how it's going to be used in the future. You have no control over that. And having the database there is just too much of a temptation for people that are in political power to use it to get more power. You have no idea how the data is going to be mined in the future. You have no idea if policies and procedures are going to change in the future in such a way that it's kind of distracting. Like, let's say that, in college, you were an activist. In college, you were picketing something that you didn't like. And then later in your career, you're seeking a job somewhere. If that database is queryable and accessible, then, that might put you out of getting a job, or that might take you off the list. And this is really dangerous because you get into a situation with groupthink. You really want people of dissenting opinions that can work together in a non-acrimonious kind of way. It's like, okay, your opinion is different. I can respect your point of view. My opinion is different. You can respect my point of view, hopefully. And people work together. This is a really good thing to have diversity of opinion inside an organization. It's really effective, especially in large organizations, to have some diversity. When you don't have diversity, you can accidentally create abominations that sort of destroy what I would call humanity and a good society. When you have that, you have things like we have seen in the intelligence community, where the CIA was, dosing random people with LSD just to see what would happen. That is a direct result of groupthink. That is a direct result of having people inside the organization that just toe the line and, don't raise any sort of dissenting opinion. We've seen it in the past. We will continue to see it in the future. I shudder to think about, the 1970s version of the CIA, the 60s and 70s version of the CIA, where they're creating, the next generation of Ted Kaczynskis, and they're dosing random citizens with LSD, and they're doing these other horrible things that were in, Project Ultra or whatever. In modern times with modern technologies and access to things like these modern databases, this is really bad news, because if it's not happening now, it will eventually. It already has happened in the past.
And, we just, a few weeks ago, I guess it was, remember the Congress, they told the NSA to stop the bulk collection of citizens' data and all that. They said to basically stop the phone spying. Remember that? It happened a few weeks ago.
It was supposed to stop.
Yeah, and we said, it's not going to stop. They're just going to figure out some other way around it. And I thought they were just going to keep on doing it regardless, because they usually just have no... they don't even care about the Constitution, the law, whatever. It's like, they wipe their ass with that kind of stuff. But they decided to go talk to the FISA courts, which are the secret courts. And the ruling just came out that almost instantaneously after the Congress had stopped doing that, the FISA courts said, no, keep doing that, please. Keep collecting all the data. So it barely lasted a couple of weeks.
Now, what happened with this, we talked about this many years ago when we first started. This happened with AT&T, a different way kind of, because AT&T was handing over customer records to the government illegally. And then there was a court case because they were like, hey, wait a minute, the records are being handed, my private records and my private call data is being handed over to the government and there was none of these laws were in place to deal with this. And so they were sued, AT&T was sued, and they were going to lose, but then Congress passed a law that was retroactively making that the passing of data retroactively okay. That's exactly what's going to happen here. It's like, well, FISA court's like, oh, okay, yeah, actually. But when it actually does make it through a real court, something will be passed, and retroactively it will have been okay. That's like the dumbest thing ever.
That's just how it works. All right, you want to talk about the TPP for a minute?
Remember, this database is being built, and you have no control over it.
All right, let's check out Squarespace. We've built our website with Squarespace. It's been incredibly easy. And the thing I like about Squarespace is the fact that it just puts the content forward and gets out of the way. There's not a lot of bubbly nonsense anywhere. Plenty of templates to choose from. And I know a lot of you guys want total control. There is Get Access. Just take a look at a couple of the different features here. There's the new cover pages. If you just need something, as a splash page or one page, you can use it for that, or you can use it as a cover page for your store or whatever. Really good for musicians. It allows you to integrate Bandcamp, or you can sell your stuff right on here, SoundCloud, whatever you want. About $8 a month, depending on your plan and what you guys are doing. And we do have some discount codes for the Tech Syndicate members. Just go to their website and use the promo code Tech Syndicate. You can click on the screen and get there just the same. Now back to the regularly scheduled tech. We're going to talk about the TPP for just a minute. So while everybody was waving flags and screaming about flags and just going crazy with everything from rainbow flags to the Confederate flag, Obama got the fast track going with his Trans-Pacific Partnership. And the things that are in this are extremely ridiculous. I mean, it's a wonder. I mean, it's no wonder they kept it secret, because if anyone knew about it, even evil people are looking at this and being like, God, that's really evil and greedy. So I'm not going to talk about this too much because we've made a video about this before, but now it looks like it's going to be a thing. And that saddens me. The whole, I guess we could talk just a minute about the whole revisions to the patents and trademarks. It basically gives pharmaceutical companies unlimited trademarks and patents. Regular drugs are going to become more expensive. Generic drugs are going to kind of go away. They're going to be able to... Yeah, go ahead.
It's how we've got this situation in America where we can go to Canada and buy drugs really cheap, and Canadian companies selling the drugs still make money. It's not a situation where Americans are buying drugs that have been subsidized by the national healthcare situation in Canada. It's totally a situation where stuff's just cheaper in Canada. And that's it. And it's not like it's like this drug, the government paid for 90% of it, and the American citizen that ran across the border and was like, I need that, is only paying 10% while the Canadian government paid for the other 90%. No, it's not that at all. Anybody who's telling you that, it's lying. That's crazy. It literally is the case that these pharmaceutical companies are just pricing drugs according to whatever region can afford. And so the problem is that, they're already selling diabetes medicine to as many people in America as possible, because it seems like everybody in America is on diabetes medicine. So what they've done is they've gone to developing countries that can't afford the American prices for the diabetes medication. And so they're like, okay, well, that's fine. What can you afford? Yeah, 3 goats and a cow. That sounds great. Let's do that. But then the problem, it's like the Canadian problem. It's like, it's really cheap to import those drugs back to America. And so this will stop those kinds of things, so that, this drug was not destined for America. We're going to sell it at a different price. If this happens with pharmaceuticals, it's only a matter of time before this happens with copyrighted material. We've covered in the past where, there's a college student that is importing books from, other countries and then selling them in America because the American version of that textbook is ludicrously expensive. This is like that, but with drugs. Now, supposedly there's some sort of quality assurance problem, and that, those pesky Canadians are not really doing any kind of drug testing to make sure that it's up to American standards. And so we shouldn't actually have, those crazy Canadian drugs on American markets. And maybe there's some merit a little bit to that kind of an argument, but for basic medicine like blood pressure medicine and medication that helps mitigate things like diabetes and just other medicines like that, it seems like maybe there's some price gouging going on here, and this would sort of make that business as usual, which is really bad. In addition to all the other copyright stuff, in addition to all the other bad stuff that we've talked about, this document is really egregious on the big pharmaceutical side of the world, because big pharmaceuticals basically saying, well, we're going to just let the people in the poor countries not buy our drugs if we can't rig the market. So
yeah, well, stuff that's in here, would allow companies outside of the U.S. Influence on internet, even like, being able to censor internet and that sort of thing, because things that are on there that are like, that's sort of infringing. And it also gives them just a ridiculous amount of power to, it basically kills a lot of things that are in the public domain. It makes the copyrights, it makes copyright for major corporations almost unstoppable. And it extends it to such a degree that it is scary, and it also removes it removes a lot of that stuff from being a U.S. controlled thing to something that's controlled on a much bigger level, basically by corporations, multinational corporations. So it's fun.
One of the most contentious provisions involved patent linkage, which would prevent regulators in TPP nations from approving generic drugs whenever there are unresolved patent issues. The TPP draft would make this linkage mandatory, which could help drug companies fend off generics just by claiming an infringement. So the current pattern, the way that we deal with that in America is when there is medicine that's older than 20 years, because our patents expire in 20 years. So like you've got a blood pressure medicine that's 25 years old, the company will change it, tweak it, patent the new variation that's good for another 20 years, and then they stop manufacturing the old version. And so in this case, it will be trivial for a TPP participating country to claim in the company that's producing the drug to claim patent infringement when somebody actually starts producing the old one, even though the reality is that the old one is not patented anymore. The new variation is, but the company's not actually producing the new one, they're producing the old one. This has been some of the reasoning for having TPP, because this has already been a problem for big pharmaceutical companies in the drugs that they produce. They can still make a lot of money on, but they're not actually protected by patent anymore. And so this is actually less work than modifying the patent system to have patents on drugs last longer, which would be slightly less insane. But it seems like that would also be a PR nightmare. They can't just directly state what they're after. They have to do it in these backroom deals where we have a leaked version of an international agreement because we can't talk about it in the open because everybody would grab their torches and pitchforks.
I know, and it's funny because as passive and as lazy as a lot of people are, this is something that I think people would be like storming the castle. You know what I mean? It's like, I think it would finally get people off their asses and be like, well, hold on a minute. Are we even going to be America anymore? And the 4th of July is coming right up. If Joe Schmo off the
street could read, they would be real upset.
Yeah, they're trying to get rid of that too. No reading. Donald Trump's hotels were hacked. Why this picture here on Mashable? They picked this. His face is basically a pink and orange sphincter. That's the picture they decided to go with. So I wonder if they like him or not. Like, yeah, use the picture of Donald Trump as a sphincter with a hairdo. Yeah, great. It's great. So I wonder if, he's a mess right now. I'm not
That's the next president of the United States. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, at least he's going to keep us safe from all those damn murderers and rapists on every other side, from any direction. They come from Mexico, they come from Canada. I wonder if some of those murderers and rapists are actually really intelligent and know how to use a computer and are angry with you. I wonder. Anyway,
meanwhile, the rest of the world points and laughs at America, and rightly so. Rightly so.
It's so bad. I'm sorry, guys. I feel like I need to go to each country and shake hands and say, I'm sorry, but can we borrow some education maybe? That would be good. We can get some education going on over here. All right. Let's talk about the Chicago 9% Netflix tax. So they want a 9% tax on essentially electronically delivered amusements. Does that mean they're going to be taxing pornography? Is pornography considered an amusement? Do some people find it amusing? I don't think.
I think Imgur is going to be completely out of business now because all those cat photos. I mean, it's got to be at least $10 or $15 million of revenue right there.
What covers amusements? Is YouTube an amusement? They need to be a little bit more specific. But a lot of people are calling it the Netflix tax. But yeah, they say it's going to be $12 million of additional revenue. So the prices of Netflix and services like that are going to go up in Chicago. I don't understand. Here's this image you sent me. Old man yells at cloud.
yeah. It's like it's the law mentions like cloud services, like this kind of thing delivered by cloud services. It's like whoever wrote this law is totally old man yells at cloud. There goes their tax revenue. It's like what?
Yeah. Could you guys not think of anything else? I mean.
Now, here's the mind bender. So in delivering that 9%, like what is that, what of the Chicago infrastructure does that go to pay for? Does it go to pay for the fiber optic internet connection that everybody in Chicago has? Oh, wait, no, it doesn't. You see, there were tax breaks that were given to these companies, but they don't even have the infrastructure. So what is is it the roads that are used to deliver all those digital packages? What is it? What does the 9% exactly go to? It's like, we just want our cut. It's like, well, theoretically, that cut is used for something useful to make it possible to deliver those services. In this case, I'm not feeling it.
All right, let's get a little bit nerdier here. Microsoft Softpedia has an article up that says Microsoft might drop the Windows Phone and will adopt the Android OS. So apparently this blogger, I find this to be strange. He's thinking that, well, okay, so last week we reported that Cortana was coming to a number of other platforms because Microsoft will be able to make money wherever Cortana is because it'll be able to harvest the data. But at the same time, this guy here says that they're going to be abandoning their Windows Phone platform. And yes, they're losing money on the Windows Phone. They're losing a lot of money on their mobile platforms. But let's just think about this for a minute right now. They got Windows 10 coming out. They've got desktop and mobile versions of Windows 10. They are making apps for Windows 10. They've got Intel has some very small x86 stuff coming out. The ZenFone x86. So more programs that are normally desktop programs might be able to work on some phones in the future. I just don't see them going to Android just yet. And so I don't agree with this blogger. I don't know where he got his information, but that's me. I think they're going to keep trying for just a little while longer before they give up. I mean, that's like them going to Google. That's like one of their biggest competitors. I know that they would be able to make money because they'll have Microsoft. They started as a software company. They'll have Outlook and they'll have Cortana and they'll have all their other services that they'll be able to bundle into their version of Android. And then you'll be able to get all the Android stuff as well. So it probably is not a terrible idea for them. But I cannot see them abandoning it just before the launch of Windows 10. I don't know. What do you think?
There's a third possibility, and I wouldn't have really considered this a viable option. But the third possibility is this. So this is the Asus ZenFone 2 that we did a video on this. The weird, mind-blowing thing about this phone is that it's an x86 64-bit Atom processor. It's quad-core, it's 2.3 gigahertz, has 4 gigabytes of RAM. I don't know if anybody has unlocked the bootloader on this yet. I don't think so. You can flash your own stuff, but it doesn't exactly unlock. I think that it should be possible to boot Windows 8 on this because it's an x86 processor, 4 gigs of RAM. Ubuntu probably also is an option. And so the other possibility is that when Microsoft could drop Windows Phone for Windows because 2.3 gigahertz, 4 gigs of RAM, quad core. We're talking Surface specs here in a phone format. The screen on this kills the battery life more than the processor. The processor from Intel is actually extremely impressive that Intel was able to pull off this good of a power saving like this in terms of like how power saving the platform is and how much work you can actually get done with the platform and actually have decent battery. Now the battery life on the phone is not great, but this is really down to the screen. The screen that they use, the IPS display, the backlight consumes an insane amount of power. The screen itself uses an insane amount of power. When I set this phone into hotspot mode and just don't use it, it will last for 2 days on battery. If I use the screen a whole bunch, I only get about 6 hours of screen on time, give or take. I really think that Microsoft could roll out something like this, like the Surface Phone, and it's just full Windows 8.1. And I think that aligns with their strategy of having, like they've got the hybrid device or whatever, where they did the demo where they're like, I've got a phone, I'm going to dock it. Oh, now I'm using this on a big monitor, like as if it's a full desktop computer. They could totally do that right now today with this x86 platform. If I had the right, if I could unlock this thing, I could put Windows 8 on it, and if there's a phone app for it, done. I mean, what do they really need to do for phone functionality for this? If they've got Outlook, like if I could have full Outlook on a phone where I just tap somebody and I can call them and deal with it, and it's like the Outlook contact manager is the phone manager, and then there's just a little app that will let you do numeric dialing, done. That's all you need.
We'll see what happens. I agree with you. I don't think they're going straight to Android. Maybe something like that would be interesting. Okay, so this is an interesting article. University of California, San Diego, they have been doing some research, and the goal of the research is to remove the speed barrier and also the distance barrier that data can travel on fiber optic cables. And right now, the problem that you have with the fiber optic cable is the more power you inject into it, the more crosstalk you get. Now, crosstalk obeys the laws of physics, so it has a pattern. It's not random. Crosstalk is not random. But, after you add a certain amount of power to it, the crosstalk becomes really great, and over a long distance, it's going to be really difficult to decipher what data was put in the first place. So what these guys have done is they've looked at the crosstalk pattern and they condition the data before it leaves. So they get when it's just a packet, they get it ready, they condition the data, and then they send it out. And they're able to mitigate the problems caused by crosstalk. This is a very simple way to put it, but essentially they've almost removed the distance barrier so that you can send data over ridiculous speeds without having, over ridiculous speeds, over ridiculous distances, without having to have too many power hubs or anything like that in between. Pretty interesting and big breakthrough. It could allow us to have much faster transfers over the pre-existing fiber. Fiber may become more than a 100-year infrastructure with this kind of stuff. I feel like at that point we'll have so many interesting wireless technologies that we may not need it, but who knows? Pretty cool stuff.
This goes more back to it's like the mantra we always say is, fiber gets faster as long as you change out the electronics at either end. That works great for up to about 4,000 kilometers. And now it's not even a problem with 4,000 kilometers. Now it's actually, it's probably not really a problem to go around the world 3 or 4 times. So this is good news. They basically deal with the interference by compensating for the interference before the signal is actually transmitted, because they've modeled what the interference would be so well mathematically. So they can compensate for the interference before actually putting it on the wire. And then the other end is able to receive the signal that has been pre-compensated for the interference on. And so it's able to still maintain that signal to noise ratio and get a signal back out of it.
Speaking of long range, let's check out the proxy ham. Man, I wish we could be I'm not going to be at DEF CON. Do you want to go to DEF CON? I'm going to be in Germany at the time. So if anyone over in Germany or Switzerland, yeah, do you want to go? You should go.
It probably would be fun.
I'll order you a ticket right now because I want one of us to go at least. And well, you know what?
It would be a lot of fun. When is it?
It's sometime next month. I know Jennifer's going to be there. It's right when I'm going to be in Germany. So anyway, there's some really interesting stuff that's going to be there. This is going to be, God, the powers that be are going to hate the proxy ham. So here's what it is. Proxy ham is just a simple Wi-Fi router, man, except it has a 900 megahertz radio connection. And you can use this 900 megahertz radio connection to broadcast a signal a couple miles away, up to 2.5 miles in good conditions. So here's the idea. You plug it up somewhere and your IP address is here. And meanwhile, a couple of miles down the road, you're sitting there with one of these gigantic antennas. Look at this ridiculous 900 megahertz antenna. You're sitting there, but you've got this giant antenna plugged up to your laptop. Now your IP address, if you're up to something, or if someone wants to figure out where you are and they find your IP address, well, that's 2 miles away. So you're doing stuff and your Wi-Fi IP address 2 miles away. That's going to make a lot of people angry. But hey, that's just one of the cool things that's going to be at DEF CON. I
like that he's also disguised the signals on the 900 megahertz band to sound like it sounds like a 900 megahertz,
like walkie-talkies or something. Or
yeah,
a telephone.
So it's like, that's just walkie-talkies. It's like, nope, somebody's Wi-Fi connection.
I don't know why this stuff makes me laugh. All right, let's see what's next on the list here. Hey, how about this? They're building a building in Dubai, entirely 3D printed. Even the furniture is going to be 3D printed. They say that it'll make the big thing here about 3D printed buildings is it's going to cut labor costs by 50 to 80%, but it's also going to cut the construction waste by 30 to 60%. And they're building this device. It's going to be a 20-foot tall 3D printer, and they'll probably have a few of these things going at the same time. They're going to be printing everything, like literally everything. That's where we've gotten with 3D printing, and I feel like we're still. God, can you imagine if there were no patents on 3D printing in the first place, and we didn't have to wait for such a long time to start using it? Because the technology it's not exactly revolutionary. It's
exactly
just
new.
Yeah, it's not exactly new at all. It's
the next
old school.
If anybody from Epson is watching, or possibly Lexmark, mostly Epson, there's a patent around using an optical encoder for positioning, and that's the next step. So what that is like inkjet printers have this plastic strip in the back of the carriage that the inkjet printhead is carried on, and that strip optically encodes the position of the printhead. in order to improve positional accuracy for the next generation of 3D printers, we need that technology. Because right now, a stepper motor is fired. It's what's called open loop. It means that we tell the stepper motor to step ever how many steps, and we hope that it's there. And the way that you zero the stepper is the stepper goes all the way back to the beginning, it trips the switch, and that's home, or that's 0. And so stepping, sometimes a step is missed, sometimes there's a problem, the accuracy is not really that great. They solved the problem in inkjet printers with this little plastic strip at the back that encodes the position insanely accurately, and that is called closed loop, where you have a sensor verifying the position. We need that in 3D printing for the next generation of 3D printers. Or we're going to have to do something like the one that comes out of like the vat of fluid or something for more accuracy. But if we're going to use extruders, we need some sort of positional accuracy on extruders in order to do that, and it's patented by the inkjet industry.
You should be charging these guys for consulting fees, because they're all taking notes right now. Does anyone from Epson watch this? If you're from Epson, hi, how you doing?
I kind of doubt it.
Yeah, probably not.
Free up that patent to free your mind.
Okay. Does anyone out there have what is it? Retinitis pigmentosa? Does anyone out there have that? If you do, there's a bionic eye implant that's been tested, and it's successfully tested. So there it is. How about that? A bionic, that's not it. There it is. So this is really interesting. That we have an eye implant that works. It's not like, it doesn't look like a regular eye, but this is a first step. People were able to see images with this implant, specifically for that one disorder there. But yeah, the blind shall see. This company may be called the Jesus Corp. Yeah, that's what they're called. I don't know. So that's interesting. We are every day moving more towards Deus Ex. Speaking of small, making things smaller, how about a spectrometer that fits in your pocket? One the size of a mobile phone. That's right. You can do all kinds of things. So spectrometers are used for a ridiculous number of things, and normally the stuff is, the interesting thing here for me is that it's going to be tiny and inexpensive, because it's a completely new way of doing it. Now, what a spectrometer is normally used for is it reads the light bouncing off of something and says like, oh, that's this made out of these materials, and it gives you a list of the materials. So having something like that in your pocket is pretty interesting. I don't exactly understand fully the way that they do it. It's something about adding ink to a CCD sensor of just a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of ink, some special inks that respond to, I don't know how it works.
First step toward a tricorder.
Yeah, really. You have this, you'd be able to scan something and be like, Captain, this is a radioactive, such and such. We should move the, why would it be Captain? I don't know. It's just, that's the appropriate thing to say when you're holding a tricorder is, Captain, I'm not reading the temporal flux. Alpha quadrant. Alpha quadrant, Mr. Data! All right, moving right along. Let's talk about video games, shall we? Video games. So there's so much that you guys can do with the Unreal Engine, and I'm shocked at what some people out there are doing with it. So there's some photorealistic stuff, and here this guy Koola, was it Koola? Yeah. Some of the stuff that he has released, I just have to show you guys. It's like photorealistic almost. I mean, I bet if you showed this to someone who, in the 80s and they didn't know that technology had come this far, I bet you could tell them, hey, this is a video, and they'd be like, wow, they really cleaned up that area. I mean, it just looks nice, but I bet it could pass for a video. And I feel like as we've grown up over the ages, when we first looked at the Unreal Engine, like the Unreal Engine 1, and we looked at that and we're like, oh my God, photorealism. And I even saw like an old PC Gamer magazines being like, is it real? Question mark, and show a picture of it. And back then you're like, oh my God, it's so real. But now we've seen this. We've played games like Crysis and Shadow of Mordor and all these games that have crazy graphics and whatnot and all these. But God, this looks so good. This looks ridiculous. Why was he using Flickr? I don't like him anymore. He's using Flickr. But yeah, that's not a photo. That's from the Unreal Engine. Anyway,
I forgot. Did we cover the photorealistic? Did we cover the photorealistic Mario from last week? I forgot.
I don't know.
Unreal Engine 4 Mario.
I'll bring that up right now. You can tell them what it is. I'll go find it, because that's another thing that was made from pretty much mostly the asset store, right?
Yeah. So Unreal Engine 4 has an asset store where you can buy assets, which is pretty cool. Obviously, Mario is not one of those assets, but some clever person made a an Unreal Engine 4 of like Mario game, but it's just Mario. It's like Mario in Silent Hill, Mario in demo Unreal Castle, Mario and whatever. And so it's kind of mind blowing because I want a game made with this now.
Yeah, I know. I want to play this. I can't. Well, the one thing that he redid, it looks like he redid mostly himself the animations. So that's painstaking.
The other thing that I discovered this week that I'll share is Besiege, which is the Kerbal Space Program of medieval siege weapons.
What?
It's Besiege.
Yeah, is that in early access still?
Yeah, well, it's early access on Steam, but it's described as the physics-based building game in which you construct medieval siege engines and lay waste to immense fortresses and peaceful hamlets. Build a machine which can crush windmills, wipe out battalions or brave soldiers, and transport valuable resources, defending your creations against whatever.
I guess that what it says, whatever.
No, it trails off.
At that point,
it's like, yeah.
At that point, they stopped caring, and they're like, no one is reading this far into the description, so whatever. I don't even know why I've got a job. That's what happened. This Ark Survival Evolved game, it's a dinosaur. It looks pretty. It looks like Rust, kind of with dinosaurs, maybe. Rust meets that game called The Forest with dinosaurs. That's what it looks like to me. I haven't purchased it yet. It looks kind of interesting. I want to know what you guys think, but it's still in early access, and it's already sold 1 million copies. I just mention it just because that's really freaking impressive that it's doing so well. I think people are liking the exploration crafting genre right now. It seems to be a big thing. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll remind you guys, the shirt of the month again. I would like to do more of my personal style of choice is like Cyberpunk. I love Cyberpunk. So I would like to have a line of Cyberpunk t-shirts. I'm not sure if you guys out there would care or would buy them, but let me know. It'll also be nice to have a bunch of, pixel art t-shirts. And John, the guy, Epic John, who does a lot of the shirts, he's upgraded some of his gear so he can do more colors now. So we may end up having the ability to do a gazillion colors and still have it be nice and soft. These prints are completely soft to the touch. That's another thing. When you get this much color on a shirt, normally it sticks to you. It feels like plastic. So I like his technology, and we pay extra for that, and we try to keep the price low. So our margins are not crazy on these shirts, but it's all about, having good stuff for you guys at a decent price. That's what I like to do. Anyway, let me know if you guys have any ideas for stuff to put in the store, whatever. It's like whatever you guys want, really. And again, that stop buying Apple product shirt, I've got a feeling that's going to be bigger than just us. If we can get a movement going, that would be amazing. And I don't know. Am I too sappy because I know I'm a hypocrite? A lot of this one may be mostly made in Korea, but a lot of the stuff here is made on the backs of people who are making, pennies. And I've got a lot of it around my house. What's that?
You know what would be neat? It would be neat if Apple open sourced their operating system. That could single-handedly be how Linux takes over the universe. Yeah, they would no, not even going to happen. It's really interesting to look at Apple's relationship with open source. It's almost like that they don't get it, but it goes somehow beyond not getting it and more like, because they used the BSD kernel, or Steve Jobs used Mach, I guess, and there were some things around that. And so there's Cups. I think Cups is a pretty good example of something that they've contributed a lot of code to, but they could be, with the profit margin that they have, they could be pouring $1 billion or so into open source development, and that would only drive Microsoft insane. I mean, let's face it, that would just make Microsoft absolutely crazy. And if they open sourced it, then I think that Mac stuff, Apple stuff, could move more into the enterprise, and they could have more sort of fun with that, because Apple just doesn't care about those markets. So it would be neat to see. It really would. It's like Dell selling. It's like, oh, I've got this Dell server that can run Mac OS, and that's an allowed thing to do, and it could be neat. My favorite description of Apple is it's the cult of Steve Jobs, and he's handing you the Kool-Aid, and the Kool-Aid really is delicious, but Steve Jobs' thumb is in it.
I don't know, man. I do like Steve Jobs in some ways, and I guess reading, I've read, for all of you guys out there who think that I just blindly hate Apple, I've owned Apple products. I still have a 160 gigabyte iPod that I have yet to replace. I'm starting to replace it now with this and a large memory card. and that's going to be cool. But that was given to me. I didn't buy it. I don't know if that makes it okay, but the last thing I bought was an Apple G4. Like one of those big plasticky blue crazy things that the whole side panel folded down and you could actually get under the hood and mess with stuff. It was still a regular computer, and you could swap out the graphics card for a different ATI graphics card at the time. So I have owned Apple products, and I do know about Apple products. And the thing that I'm really pushing for right now is that they really could be a force for change. So when I was in China, a lot of people you meet and talk to, a lot of them have Apple products, and it's weird. And then you talk to a lot of people who work more in the industry, and most of those people have Android products or some made in China, like different products that are non-Apple. And they have a very negative opinion of Apple because Apple's doing a number of different things. A lot of them are just random people I talk to, not even people that we were there with, just people we meet at a bar and start talking to. A lot of them are like, well, the West thinks that things that are made in China are all crappy. And a lot of that's companies like Apple and, well, mostly stuff like Walmart who come over and they're like, we want everything really cheap. And we don't care how much your employees get paid. We just destroy your employees, make them jump off the building. As long as our prices are cheap, that's good. So the greedy companies are like, sure, we'll do it. You want to give us money, we'll do it. Whereas, and then that's giving them a bad name around the world. And I started feeling a lot, man. And you feel that coming off the people that are like, we don't want to be this anymore. And it's interesting. And I guess it's just Apple could do something about it. I know they could. Let's pressure them. Do you guys want to pressure them? That's me. I'm more of the humanitarian side of things. It's like, yes, they could do a lot of amazing things with everything from open source to enterprise grade gear. That could be such a positive thing in the world, and they project such a positive image. And I believe that they even started as a very positive company. And I hope that Woz would agree with me on a lot of these things. And they've got this walled garden now. The idea of ownership is different. You cannot open you can't open an Apple product. It's not. You just can't. I mean, you can't take them apart. You've been taking apart their laptops. Yeah, good luck. If you can't take it apart, do you really own it? A lot of the music is more of a rental situation. Like it's just so covered in DRM. It's one of the gardens with the highest wall that I've ever seen. So it's just the way that things work in the world. But do we have to stand for it? I don't know. It seems like we are because we're voting for it with our dollars. I'm encouraging you guys not to. There, I'll end on it. Start an Apple rant, end on an Apple rant. How about that? And I think their products work okay. I mean, it's not an argument about, hey, do they work? Yes, they do. They work really well for some people. All right, enough of that.
And other people, they taste like thumb.
Yeah, like you guys drank all the Kool-Aid, and all that's left in here for me is a thumb.
It's like this is so the bouquet is so amazing and it's so delicious, and it's just so ruined by that hint of thumb.
All right, guys. Thanks for being awesome. Thanks for I don't know. That's it. You guys are awesome. We will see you in the comments on the website, and that's pretty much it. See ya.